Welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. Glad to have you. If you are a first-time listener, welcome. Glad to have you in the conversation. Make sure that you comment and send us suggestions for other topics. For those of you who've come back, I want to say thank you. And here's why I want to say thank you. We recently found out that the show is now in the top 10% fastest growing podcasts in the world. And that's pretty exciting because there's over 1 million podcasts out there. So that's a lot of fun. A little bit of housekeeping. Don't forget to subscribe, no matter where you're finding us today. Whether you're on our website at rexandrewsshow.com, if you found us on one of the podcast distribution apps, we're on over 25 of those, so we can be found everywhere that you listen to podcasts, and then social media. So all the big ones, all the little ones, and some of the ones we don't even like. So anyway, so today's show, I'm really excited about this. I've got a special guest that's with us today, and of course, most of our shows these days are on the good old virtual, but we've learned how to do with that. I want to introduce you to my guest today. She's an amazing person. She's published books. She's all over the internet, a speaker, coach. Just one of these people that you're like, wow, how does she do this? So today I want to welcome to the show, Rhonda. Did I say this right? It's Sciortino, right?
Close. It's Sciortino.
Sciortino. I guessed wrong on that C. Okay, fantastic.
It took me 5 years to be able to pronounce it properly, but that's the way my husband says his family name, so I'll go with that.
Fantastic. Rhonda, you do a lot of amazing things. I'm actually very honored to have you on the show here today, seeing that we're new, but we're fast growing, and we'll probably put out a little over 250 episodes this year. So pretty excited about that. But okay, so let's backtrack and tell Rhonda's story. I always tell, and my listeners probably get tired of me saying this, but life, in my opinion, is like crossing a stream. You know, you hop from rock to rock to rock, hoping to get to that other side, to get to your destination.
Right.
Some rocks are pretty wet, and you hope not to fall off, right? And some rocks, sometimes you have to backtrack and find a different rock. So I'd like to kind of dial this back a little bit, back before you became this public speaker and author and all those good things and the topics that you teach us about. Let's hear the Rhonda story. So where'd you grow up? What was your family like? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh man, the Rhonda story, the real Rhonda story, Rex, would give you nightmares. I don't want to do that.
Well, no, I'm good for nightmares. Whatever you love. Let's hear your story.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. You're so kind and generous in your introduction there, and it's really my honor to be here with you in your podcast. I'm so excited for what you're doing, and giving people an opportunity to share their stories. I think that's so important. So my story is no more important or poignant than anybody else's, but you asked me, so I'll share.
Absolutely. Everybody's a story.
Everybody has a story, that's for sure. Right. So I was in the child welfare system for the first 16 years of my life. I was very, very young when the newness of being a mom had worn off and my mother left. And my father was a long haul truck driver, and and back in the early 1960s, men didn't get custody of their kids anyway.
Right.
And so he moved on and remarried, and nobody ever came back. And so I was in the child welfare system, and I was placed with my maternal grandparents, and lots and lots of people nowadays, grandparents are raising their grandchildren, and they do an amazing job, and I give them so much credit. My grandparents, though, had issues. My grandfather was mentally ill.
Oh boy.
His mother had left him when he was 12 to care for his 9-year-old brother and 6-year-old sister. So he was, people used to say, I would hear people whisper, he's just not right. And so he wasn't right. I mean, we didn't talk about mental health diagnoses, back in those days.
Nope.
And there was this huge stigma around it. But, he wasn't right. And it was because of abandonment and abuse and whatever. So I have a lot of mercy for him, but he was a tough guy. to be with. My grandmother was an alcoholic and an addict, and I think she self-medicated because of well, everything, a lot of, you know, him and the poverty that we lived in and so on. And so I emancipated when I was 16 years old and was on my own. And so I actually, the way that I was able to do that, I started a job. I actually started working when I was doing whatever I could do to make money to buy food when I was 6. The first time I remember actually earning any money, but I got my first real job when I was 15 years old. And so that allowed me to emancipate. I was able to get my own apartment and my own car and have a checking account and savings account. All these things were required by the judge. And he didn't say how much money had to be in those accounts, but he said I had to have the accounts. So I got everything. I checked every box that the judge told me I had to check. And so I still graduated in the top 10 of my high school class of over 600. So I would go to high school at night, and then I would go to work in the insurance office in the afternoon. And then I would go to the local community college, high school in the morning, and then local community college at night. And so I wound up becoming the youngest licensed insurance broker in the state of California. That first job was in an insurance agency.
Wow.
And I bought my first house when I was 19. I bought my first rental property when I was 21. And by the time I was 27, I really kind of decided that it was the purpose for my life to use what I knew about insurance to protect and defend the good people and organizations that take care of abused children. So I quit my job, you know, my job that had the paycheck and the health insurance.
Oh yeah, one of those, huh?
Yeah, that one. I quit my job and I sold my house, and I got a little condo, and I sold my Mercedes, and I bought a Subaru, and I sold all my furniture, including my refrigerator. And that was not very well thought out. I would say I shouldn't have sold the fridge. That was not a good move. But I sat on the floor of my little condo and I made cold calls to homes for abused children. That's what we called them back then. And I wound up getting, I think it was like 37% market penetration in the state of California in the first 2.5 years in business.
Wow.
And then I went nationwide.
Okay.
And so I built those businesses, and over the years, we were able to put literally millions of dollars back into the budgets of child welfare organizations because they were just, the insurance premiums were just crazy for not very much coverage. Insurance companies didn't understand what they were insuring. So we were able to sort of disrupt that industry.
Wow.
And so I'm very proud of that. But I've sold both of those companies. And so I wrote my first book, I think I was 48 or 49. I was actually writing to a former foster kid, 17-year-old girl who was making bad decisions at about 100 miles an hour. And her foster mom said, "Would you talk to her?" And I said, "She's 17-year-old girl. She's not going to listen to me, but I'll write to her." Okay. And that way she can wad it up in a ball and she can throw it across the room, but she'll eventually go pick it up.
Right.
And she'll read it. And so I made a few copies of what I wrote. It turned out to be much more than a letter. I had an awful lot to say.
Right.
And I made some copies and I gave them to some mental health professionals in my world, social workers, psychologists that work with abused kids, because I wanted to make sure that I was not going to harm her. I'm very well aware that to the extent that we could help somebody, that's really the degree that we could harm them.
Right.
And so I gave copies away and said, "Does this look okay to you? Make sure I'm not saying anything wrong." And somebody sent it to the buyer at Barnes & Noble in New York.
Wow.
And that, right? And that lady called me, and she sounded like one of those ladies. I don't know if you remember, you look like you might be in my age group, Rick. So
Probably.
forgive me if I'm wrong about that.
Right.
But you might remember the ladies from like the 60s and the 70s in offices that had a cigarette like dangling out of their mouth, and they would talk and ashes would fall in there. So she sounded like that. And she said something like, I got your book, and it's obvious you don't know anything about designing books and covers and everything else, but I can't put this stupid thing down. So she was like, if you'll change this, and this, I'll make sure it's in every single Barnes and Noble in the United States. And I thought, holy smokes, I never meant to write a book. I wrote a letter, and but I thought, this is priceless advice. And so I did everything that she said to do. She did what she said she was going to do, and she placed an order and got me in all the Barnes and Noble. And the next thing I knew, Rex, the Today Show called.
Oh my goodness.
I know it, right? So my books have been featured on Ellen and the Today Show and many other shows, and I've been so incredibly blessed. So I never ever thought in a million years that I would be an author.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I would be in insurance and risk management for child welfare organizations all the days of my life, and I was very happy to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But turns out that now I'm speaking all over the country and writing books. I've written a curriculum called Your Real Success to help people, victims of any kind of trauma, to mine the lessons out of what they've been through. And because it turns out it's those exact things that we need to create personal and professional success, which I think if we're really doing it right, it's our purpose. It's the fulfillment of the purpose for which we were born. So I'm talking way too much.
No. This is great. So I've got some questions, dial some things back. Obviously, you didn't have any siblings. Okay. So
my mother did keep 2 children.
Oh, she did. Okay.
She only left me.
Oh, well, how nice of her. So
it worked out really well for me. I got everything I needed from her and my father. I got their best DNA.
Well, but I want to dial back because there was a question that came to my mind. I'm assuming you didn't have much involvement with your siblings, right?
No.
Okay. So the reason I'm going down this path is you basically did this alone because you had a dysfunctional set of foster, which were your grandparents. You didn't have your mother or father in your life, that kind of stuff. So what was it like being this young whippersnapper full of, pissing vinegar and enthusiasm and drive? How did you deal with being just alone in your own box? I mean, when you first went to work and bought your first house and, of course you probably had your friends, but how was it like not having that connection with family to go share those things?
Oh, I think you don't really miss what you never had. I'm very much a loner.
Okay.
And I have tons of friends now. I married into a big Italian family 30 years ago. And so I have family now. I have amazing friends, relationships with good, solid, healthy people,
right.
and healthy relationships. But, and I'm grateful for those things. But being alone when I was a kid, when I was being beaten or burned. Some of the things that they did, and I'm not trying to give anybody a nightmare.
No, I understand.
But it's a survival mechanism, I think, to learn how to self-nurture, to learn how to be alone. And so I've never been one of those people that I see, and it kind of grieves my heart, when somebody will stay with an abusive spouse, for example, because they don't think they can make it on their own, or they can't imagine what it would be like to be on their own. I find that so sad. I've been alone. I've
Right.
been the kid screaming and nobody comes and rescues. The police didn't really come to the neighborhood that I grew up in.
Right.
And so I survived.
Okay.
I'm fine. And I'm good to be on my own, actually.
Well, I guess what that is leading to my next question, and maybe I'm leading the witness here. Did that motivate you? Because a lot of the things you've written about is resilience. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that. Was that a motivating factor? Maybe that was conscious or subconscious. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of human stories where everybody grows out of struggle, or we hope they grow out of struggle. And in most success cases, the people I've talked to, there were series of traumatic incidents or some magnitude earthquake type incident in their life. But being alone, did that drive some of your resilience looking back?
I don't know if it drove it,
Okay.
but I think I had to learn how to be self-reliant,
Okay.
how to be independent. I knew that nobody was going to come rescue me.
Okay.
I knew that I never was the person who expected Prince Charming to come riding in on the white steed.
Right.
I've always felt, I mean, it's a good thing to be self-reliant, to be independent. I've never expected a check from the government. I've never expected to buy a winning lottery ticket. I don't buy a lottery ticket ever because I know for a fact I would never, ever win. Because it's just not the story of my life.
Right.
Everything I've done has been, I've been very blessed. Don't get me wrong. I want to give God credit with this. God has blessed me like I can't even, if I told you, you would think I was lying or bragging or delusional. So
Sure.
It's not all me. It's just that I never expected it to be somebody else.
Right.
Coming and rescuing me
you.
or providing for me or anything like that. With my personal relationships, I choose people because I want to,
Okay.
not ever because I want something from them. And I think that's really, I think that's an important distinction.
No, that's really important. And the reason I asked that, because a lot of people in our world today, and I'm not picking on any generations, back in the days when we grew up, because we're close to the same age, guessing here, there was a lot more of hard work and people weren't quite as entitled or expecting things from others. And so I think it's a message a lot of people need to hear, the fact that here you are and you've created this incredible life for yourself, but it wasn't handed to you, right? I mean, you came out of near poverty and an abusive environment. I mean, a mental health patient, who's who in mental health, from your grandfather, your grandmother being an alcoholic and an addict and stuff. And so, but you didn't let that hold you down. Okay. Because I think one of the things I get frustrated with in our world today is this whole victimhood thing. And, if your life had been fast forwarded, or now you were, say, 22 now, it'd be pretty easy to play that victim card in a big way. Okay, so let's fast forward. You got your first book put out. A lot of people don't understand writing a book. When you're working with a publisher, you're creating a product. Okay, it's not just that you're telling a story or you're doing these things, because the book publisher, they want to sell books, right? And books are products. And so I've worked with several authors, and yeah, people don't realize you're going to put your manuscript up there, but you're going to make a lot of changes that you didn't think of because it's a product. Okay. Right. So you get your first book out and you get the modifications done. The phone starts ringing. You start showing on the Today Show. Then what happens?
Oh gosh, there were so many things that happened, Rex. I think the most important one, the most surprising one to me, and the most important from the standpoint of this whole incredible life change that I went through, that I never planned on and never saw coming, was that people wanted me to come tell my story. They wanted me to come speak. Well, Rex, I was 27 years old.
Yeah.
before I ever told anybody that I had been in the child welfare system. My husband
Wow.
didn't know that my
Okay.
parents had left me. My best friend didn't know that my parents had left me. And it's a matter of shame that I really thought that if you knew that my own mother and father didn't want me, you won't want to be my friend either.
Right.
And so I didn't want anybody to know. And so I, as I said, I wrote this, I was writing a letter to a girl named Chantel.
Okay.
I was just writing to Chantel. And now all of a sudden, these books are everywhere. And my book is everywhere. So it's part of my story. It's this much teeny weeny little bit of my story. It's not the whole thing. I would say to everybody, if you're going to write a book and you're going to tell your story, write only about what you're willing to have people talk to you about.
Okay.
Because you put your stuff out there and somebody in a grocery store line somewhere is going to say, so where's your mother now? Or how do you feel about, I mean, it's just like a punch in the gut when it's coming from, some random sort of out of place, So I never thought I would be talking about it. So to get those requests to come and tell my story on stage was wild. I realized though, and part of the reasons why I started my podcast of Empowering Resilience and why I wrote the curriculum, Your Real Success, I realized that it was freeing. Okay. Once I started to really just own my story, and then embrace my story, not becoming a victim.
Right.
I mean, I heard what you said. I agree with what you said. I say all the time, I talk to a lot of foster kids all over the United States and former foster kids, and I say all the time, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I wish it hadn't happened to you. It's horrible. It should never happen to anybody. But it's not happening now.
Very good point.
And we, at the time that we were being abused, that was time that was stolen from us. But every minute after that we relive it and we feel the pain again is a minute that we're giving away to that person. And we shouldn't give one more moment of our precious lives to the people who have mistreated us, because we only get 1,440 minutes in every single day. And when they're gone, they're gone.
Right.
And I decided I was victimized, but I'm no longer a victim.
Right.
And I'm never going to let anybody victimize me that way ever again, to the degree that I can help it. And so it's empowering when we face the truth, when we face our story, because I can now get up on stage and I can talk to people about what's happened. Like I just shared with you about what happened. You didn't see me break down in tears.
No.
I'm not in a puddle on the ground. I can talk about it now because I've pulled it out in the light of day and I've looked at it as an adult and I've said, you know what? It wasn't my fault that my parents left. I didn't do anything wrong. And it wasn't my fault that my grandparents just weren't terribly functional and would hit me and burn me with cigarettes and discipline me with hot oil. They weren't right. It was them. It wasn't me.
Right.
So putting context around it, giving it perspective. Now that I'm an adult, I can say, you know what? They all missed out because I'm pretty awesome, it turns out.
That's great.
Not perfect, a goofball, a knucklehead, but
sure.
You know what? I'm okay, and I'm okay with my story.
Now, did you come to that realization on your own? Was there an aha moment? Was there someone, a therapist? Was there someone who contributed to that enlightenment?
I would say there were a handful of amazing people in my life at different times of my life who really so significantly impacted me. And one was a high school teacher who I'm still friends with. In fact, I think she probably doesn't live very far from you there in Colorado.
Okay.
And amazing woman. And I realized she looked at me, she looked me in the eyes. And that doesn't sound like that big of a deal. But you know, when you're a kid growing up in a shack that doesn't have functional plumbing, I mean, I didn't even know what a shower was. And would go months and months and months without washing my hair or you know, it was just awful.
Oh my goodness.
I was difficult to look at. And I didn't realize that nobody made eye contact with me until that one teacher did.
Wow.
And when she did that, when she treated me like every other kid, what she really was doing, Rex, is she gave me dignity. And there were other people in my life. The insurance agent who gave me my first job when I was 15. And I have to say, I got the job because I was the fastest typist at my high school because of that teacher. She was my typing and shorthand and business teacher.
Right.
And so, you know, I got that job because of the job skills that she taught me. And that launched a 40-year career in the insurance industry that wound up being a disruptor in that industry as it relates to child welfare organizations. So, you know, I guess I could go on and on and on, but the bottom line is there were people in my life who tried to plug the holes. I often say trying to love somebody who's been abused and mistreated is like pouring water into a bucket that has holes in the bottom.
Right.
And it can just suck the life out of you, you know, trying to love somebody who's broken. But the people who came along in my life and gave me dignity and loved me warts and all were the people who plugged the holes in the bucket.
Well, that's a great analogy. So after you got your first book out, how long was it until you published your next book?
Oh, wow. Okay. I'd actually have to look at the published dates on those to see. I think 2 or 3 years.
2-3 years. Now you self-published there. You've written a whole handful of books. So how many books have you written?
I think 13 now.
Okay.
And I have 3 in various stages of completion now. I think one will be out later this year.
Okay. Now, are all of those books available on Amazon or Barnes? Are they even around anymore? Gosh, I haven't looked.
They are. You know, after my Barnes and Noble story, I try to start the list with Barnes and Noble and Amazon.
Okay, all right. Well, fair enough. They got you up. They got you up and going. So
yeah, they sure did.
So I've looked through your site and that kind of stuff. And again, could you tell us your website so people know where to go hunt you down?
Yes, it's rhonda.org. Very simple. RHONDA.org.
Boy, you got a great domain really early, didn't you?
Well, I wish I had rhonda.com. Somebody in Arizona has that, and it looks like the last time I looked, she hasn't touched her website in years. And I think, oh, let me have rhonda.com. But anyway, no, it's .org.
Yeah. Well, okay. So was it like a fever to publish more books? Did you just have more to say? Was it feeling out of obligation? Because again, you were working all this time. It wasn't just that you were a full-time speaker and author, right?
Oh gosh, right. No, I was working. So No, I didn't think I'd ever publish a book. I mean, I didn't think I'd write the book I wrote. So
Right.
I'm not an author. I don't have a degree in journalism or creative writing or anything like that. It really just comes down to having something to say.
Okay.
And I'm a reader. I love reading. I've read a book a week all of my life. The one
Wow.
good thing I can say that came out of my childhood was that my grandmother taught me to read before I started kindergarten. So from the time I was about 4, I was reading. And so I feel really strongly that life is too short to read a bad book. I don't want anybody to waste my time with something that's not really well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't write a book just for the sake of writing a book. I just wouldn't, because I wouldn't presume to take somebody's time with
Right.
with something that wasn't well thought out. I'm not saying I'm an expert or anything like that. As far as my writing or whatever, I'm sure there, a lot more skilled and talented people than I am in the world. But when I feel like I really have something to say, I'll start writing. And very oftentimes it's a blog.
Okay.
But if the blog turns into 15,000 words, I'm pretty sure, Rex, at that point, it's going to go ahead and be a book.
Yep.
So I just keep going.
You're on the way. You're on the way.
I'm on the way. I'm on the way. So, what it is I change names and circumstances so that nobody's identifiable, but very often, it'll be in my travels. It'll be a young person who's heard me speak and comes up afterwards. And usually the conversation starts with, I've never told anybody this before.
Sure.
And then they'll share something with me. And so a lot of what I've written, I'm thinking now of the book, Successful Survivors, the 8 character traits of successful survivors and how you can attain them. There are so many people I've met, and not just victims of abuse, but, victims of violent crime, women who have been raped, people who have been mugged at gunpoint. I mean, these traumatic times in our lives where somebody else has control.
Yep.
That's what it really comes down to. It could be the pandemic. All of a sudden you're out of work through no fault of your own. All of a sudden you're standing or you're in your car waiting in a food line, and you've worked your whole life and you never expected to ever get anything for free or to need to be in a food line or whatever. I mean, people who have lost a loved one suddenly, a sudden death. And I mean, you name the trauma. Nobody gets through this life without pain.
That's right.
Some kind of something that we go through. And so I realized, and why I wrote this book, there are so many people who have survived something,
mm-hmm.
and they're stuck there. There are survivors filling our penitentiaries.
Oh, yeah.
There are survivors who are living, I won't say living, existing. They're really not living because they're still reliving the pain.
Right.
And they're stuck. There are people who, they don't have good relationships. They don't have peace. They don't have joy. They don't have financial provision. All 5 points
mm-hmm.
of success. They don't have those things. And the reason is that they survived, but they're stuck there. And I say all the time, if you're going to go through the valley of the shadow of death, for Pete's sake, don't set up camp.
Right.
Keep going. Once we've survived, that's the hard part. It's downhill from there to mine the lessons out and say, you know what? How I got through that? I was resourceful.
Right.
I figured it out somehow or other. I figured out, how to eat somehow or other. I figured out how to get myself to, a job and how to get there every day or whatever. It's courage. Having courage when you've gone on 27 job interviews and you've been declined for 27 jobs, it takes courage to get up and go to the 28th interview.
Right.
I mean, I could go on and on and on with these character traits. But here's the good news, Rex. When we look at these character traits and we start identifying those things within us,
Right.
they are already there. When we start recognizing those things, I'm telling you what, we sit up a little taller. We put our shoulders back. We feel a little bit better about ourselves, and we're empowered. And that empowerment, I'm just not talking about, some esoteric, this is how I feel. No, empowerment to me is the precursor to action that creates your successful life.
Right.
So that's, that it was, you asked me about, prompting the other books. Look at that. One person stuck and breaking my heart. And I had to write that book. I had to tell that person, here's how you get unstuck. Every single thing I write, it's for somebody else. It's never for me.
Right. Exactly. Recently, a couple of episodes back, I had a guest. Her name is Amelia Zachary. And she had an incredible story, immigrant to the United States, and listened to the episode from Amelia. But she got raped in college, and she didn't tell anyone for almost 20 years. And so she lived with that trauma for 20 years. That trauma caused other things, and I won't spoil the story, but go take a listen to that. But I think one of the things, and I think you touched on it and I observed, is very few times when we've gone through struggles do we have the capability to go back and translate the effort that it took to get to survive and use that same effort to then thrive or move forward. And so I think that's something that a lot of people, because you're right, everybody goes through trauma. You get to, the age group that we're in, you're going to do a lot of drama, and especially if you got kids. I got 5 kids. Oh, there's trauma that's created. So, but life never hands anybody an easy street. And all the people I talk to and all the biographies I read and the studying of the human experience, so many people don't realize that the overnight success was never an overnight success.
Never overnight.
So that's an urban myth completely. And so I think a lot of times people that have the same trait in common is being able to take that effort, and not just that it took to survive, to eat, clothes on your back, transportation, whatever it happened to be, live through drama, physical abuse, mental abuse, whatever, and then put that same effort into being successful. Well, most people aren't mindful that they do that. And I think that you're probably a walking, talking example of that, is that you took that fortitude and turned it into to make a life that's extraordinary. So I know you're working on some new stuff. Fast forward quite a bit. I know, and we're not being fair to you because we could probably talk for hours up here today. And I will
hear me talk for hours.
I will have you back on more shows, that's for sure, because there's lots of things to unpack with Rhonda here. But what are you working on now? What has your attention? What's your passion focused on right now?
Thank you for asking that. The thing that most burdens my heart is that there's, with everybody locked down through this pandemic, kids are not doing well in their education. They're missing out. And it's not just education per se with books. It's how do you get along with other people?
Oh yeah. I've got a senior in high school, and she's an amazingly talented young girl. But she missed the second half in school because of the pandemic. So that all went online or didn't exist then this entire year. Now, when you're a senior in high school, you've already checked out. You have that senioritis thing going on, right? Well, think of being a senioritis, and now you're in your second semester and you're online 2 hours a day. And I look back at my high school experience. I was class president, Mr. Everything, sports, football guy, all that stuff. that was the stuff I really remembered. You know, it wasn't the honors English classes or the goofy math or stuff like that. And so I just look at my daughter and I think, you've been robbed of half of your high school experience, half of it. And I think it's just terrible. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on that tangent, but
No.
I just think our youth right now, literally most kids have probably had a year and a half of their education stolen from them, and experience. It isn't just the classroom stuff.
Right. That's exactly it. I mean, when I think about that, that grieves my heart. And then when I think about the domestic violence that's happening, Rex, oh man, and child abuse, teachers are the number one mandatory reporters because they see the kids every single day. They see changes in their affect. It's not just looking for a kid with a black eye.
Right.
It's looking for the kid whose personality has changed. And they can't make eye contact and they're looking down. There's body language that they look for. There's personality changes. There's so much that teachers can see with kids to know what's going on. And so with kids not being in school, I worry about child abuse. I worry about domestic violence. I know that there's been a spike in suicides.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I could park right there for a week about a child, for crying out loud. I mean, I heard about an 8-year-old taking his life. And you know, when I was 12, I wanted to take my life. Because when you're 12 or when you're 8 or, when you're a little kid, 18 and on your own is about 4,000 years away.
Yep.
You just don't even have the ability to put it into context and go, okay, I can make it. It'll be fine. No, they don't.
No.
And so the idea of creating a permanent solution to a problem that is temporary, but they don't really think it's temporary. It's heart-wrenching for me. Well, before the pandemic, we had just launched what we call the Love is Action Community Initiative.
Okay.
And it's needed, I think, even more now than ever before. The website on that is loveisaction.com.
Okay.
And the idea of it is to connect people in safe ways so that, the lady who's alone and older and has nobody can connect with the young kid in the apartment building who's home alone all day because mom's working 2 jobs.
Right.
And so there are safe ways for this to happen. There are vetted organizations that help people make it happen. So anybody can go onto that website, loveisaction.com, and find an organization, usually that's in their vicinity, that they could connect with and somehow get connected to people. If it's, a gift card for a grocery store, sending groceries to, a single mom with 3 little kids that they literally have no food in the house. If it's a kid who's about to go into foster care because mom's, living in a garage and somebody's found out and, there's not proper, food and refrigerator and, and all that stuff. I mean, very often kids go into foster care because of neglect. It's not necessarily abuse, it's neglect. She can love her kids and not be able to take care of her kids. Well, I mean, if somebody from the community can donate a little fridge, if somebody from the community can donate a twin bed or whatever the law requires for that lady to be able to keep, I should say that mom, to be able to keep her kids, people will do it. I've never, ever talked to people and had anybody say, kids who don't have enough to eat and they're being abused or they're neglected or whatever, I don't care. Yeah. No, everybody says, I would do something if I knew what to do. Right. If I had some clue of what to do. But most of the child welfare professionals I know, they're doing 10 jobs, they're wearing 10 different hats, they're overworked, they're underpaid. And so if you call them and you happen to get somebody and say, hey, you know, I'm your neighbor, I'm just a mile and a half away, is there anything I can do to help? No, there's not. I'm sorry. And the reason is they don't know if you're a pedophile.
That's right.
They don't know if you're an axe murderer. They don't know you from anything. And there's special, you know, there are, I mean, some of these kids are there because they're confidential placements. They had to testify against their abuser. They can't let their identity and their whereabouts, you know, out. So you really can't just call and get plugged in, but there are ways to do it.
So is this initiative that you're working on, is it regional, national? What's the footprint look like?
Well, it's national. It sounds funny to say it's a national community initiative. Doesn't that sound like I didn't know what I was talking about when I named it?
No.
It actually, the whole idea is that it be implemented in a community.
Okay.
I would love for somebody from Broomfield, Colorado, for somebody from, you know, Salt Lake City, Utah, wherever it is, to call or to, you know, to go on the website and say, I want to bring this to my community. I want to do this.
Okay.
And so we call them the champions.
Right.
You know, if you're going to be the champion of love in your community, we'll give you the blueprint. We'll give you, you know, here's the 5 steps. You know, you're one person. All right, go out, find 2 more. You know,
I'll give you a tip of some folks I know that are doing some neat stuff. If you've ever heard of justserve.org.
I have heard.
Okay, so Just Serve is a great place to be able to take a framework or initiative like what you have and get some spread there. So I don't know. I guess I thought I was being ingenious there for a second, but
no, I've heard, but I didn't say I've acted. Rex.
Oh, okay. Well, go check.
I don't know anybody there. I need to follow it up. I'm going to make a note right now.
Yeah, go to justserve.org. What's amazing is it's kind of a portal connection to people who have programs or people who want to volunteer in those types of things. And so, yeah, go check them out, justserve.org. So that's
awesome.
Great. So that's amazing. I mean, this sounds completely consuming. Are you still working? Are you just speaking, writing, and doing this? Or what's your current world look like?
Sold my companies. I'm no longer working the regular, you know, job.
Okay.
So it's speaking and writing and consulting and just trying to cast the vision for what's possible with Love is Action. I've assembled a coalition of subject matter experts that just people I've met all over the United States who are really at the top of their field. And we call ourselves Successful Survivor Solutions.
Okay.
So we help organizations that are helping others.
Wow,
and
that's
so,
great.
Yeah, so really that's full-time and a half.
Full-time and a half. Now, is there a website for that organization too?
Yes, successfulsurvivorsolutions.com.
Well, that's a mouthful, but that shouldn't be hard to find. So that's great. Well, I'm just amazed at your story. Like I said, I love the human condition. I love the experience. And I know that everybody's a story. Some stories are more interesting than others. Some stories are long. Some stories are short. But I think everybody has value. Now, another question I picked up on that I'd like to ask is it sounds like when we talked earlier, that faith has played a role in your life. Is that still a big element that's going on for you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I decided that I was raised by atheists, and I decided that I was going to believe that Jesus is Lord when I was, I think, 15. So I got baptized when I was 15. And I've been trying to figure out how to be a good Christian ever since.
Right. Well, that's good.
I will let you know when I crack the code.
Well, I never go into politics, and I don't spend a whole lot of time, promoting or chastising anybody for their faith, because I think as long as you find one and you're following it and you're being true about it, it's a great guidepost. It's a great iron rod that we can hold on to and get through some of the struggles. So it's good to hear that. And I hope that more and more people are not afraid or ashamed to say that, because sometimes, wow, if you admit that you have faith in your life at almost at any level, you can become a target. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, when we grew up, that was pretty much a known tenet, right? I mean, now today that's like, ooh, do I share that or not?
You know, I just really feel so strongly that God gave us all our free will, and I will too. And so I don't try to impose my faith and values on anybody else. I guess you would probably say I'm really lousy at the whole Great Commission thing, because I just feel, I mean, I was raised by atheists, so I have this kind of, twisted perspective of, okay, I'm not going to try to shove my faith down anybody's throat.
Sure.
I'm going to try to live it the best I can. And then if you want to know about it, then you could ask me.
That's right.
And then forget it. I won't shut up. If you actually open the door, and you want to know about, what Jesus has done for me. I've written 2 of the books that I've written are, one is The Prayer That Covers It All. And it's kind of my take on the Lord's Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the way I approached Christianity and being raised by atheists, for me, everything was subject to question.
Right.
I've never just said, oh, let me memorize these rote things that I don't even know what it is, but no, I don't do that. And so I do the Lord's Prayer the way I do it.
Okay.
So I wrote about that. It served me very well. And then the other book is The Keys to Answered Prayer.
Right.
And it's just 15 keys that I found that I won't say that work, because then it sounds like I have some kind of a formula. It's not like that. It's more like, again, writing something based on, somebody who's hurting,
mm-hmm.
who is in my, sphere of influence. And the idea of meeting so many people who had faith at one point, but they threw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater because, I prayed for my mom not to die when she was sick, but she died. So therefore there's no God. Right. Or, those kinds of conversations. I thought, okay, well, I need to address that. So I studied the Bible for, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 years, and made my notes and wrote my little book. It is just a little bitty book on the keys to answered prayer, but so it's there. I'm not hiding my faith, but
sure.
But I typically don't lead with it.
Well, that's good. Now, the $1 million question that I throw out from time to time, and I hope not every upcoming guest listens to this, but well, who cares? They'll figure it out, or they'll probably forget it. So, we go through this world today, and it's really popular to have these bucket lists. Okay. Well, okay, that's easy. Everybody knows the things they'd like to do, and a successful person like yourself have done a ton. So how about the opposite? What's something you don't want to do?
I'm never, ever, ever going to drop out of an airplane.
Okay.
Unless I get pushed out of an airplane. Something has gone desperately wrong if I drop out of an airplane.
Well, I'm with you on that one. I'll share that. That's one of mine. I've no interest in doing that. I've no interest at all. All right. So let's help our listeners find you again. Okay. I want you to do 2 things. We know it's rhonda.org is your main website.
Right.
Then also about the solutions site, if you could give that again.
SuccessfulSurvivorSolutions.com.
Okay. Fantastic. And for those who might want to look at everything you do, please spell your last name so that way they can do it on a search engine.
Yes, it's SCIORTINO.
Fantastic. Well, Rhonda, this has been wonderful. I can't wait to have you back in, because I want to deep dive on some of these books and some of the things really excited about this. I want to get progress update on what you guys are doing right now, because it's an amazing initiative. So I appreciate your time coming on. I'm really honored. It's the guests that make the show. And I'm really honored that I get such high quality folks so early in getting this beast off the ground. So I really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you having me, Rex, and I'm so grateful for what you're doing. I think this is awesome. And I just want to encourage any of your listeners, if you need a shot of resilience, come and see, or listen to my podcast, Empowering Resilience.
Oh yeah, I forgot to ask about that. So it's Empowering Resilience, okay?
Empowering Resilience, yeah.
Are you distributed all over the place, or where are you at mostly?
We're all over the place, and I have links on my rhonda.org website.
Fantastic. I'm sorry. I should have.
Oh gosh, don't apologize. No, it's fine. I'm always trying to think about, if I'm a listener, what do I want to hear? What do I want to hear something that meets my need.
Right.
So if there's somebody out there who's struggling, they're in a hard place, or they've gone through a hard place, come visit me at Empowering Resilience, because we're all about saying, okay, I'm sorry that happened, but now here's what we're going to do. We're going to use what we learned from that and use it for good. I would say never, ever, ever waste your pain.
Well, this has been fun. It's been great because I didn't have to pry anything out of you. If you were a dinner party guest, you may not go home till after like 1 o'clock in the morning, but that's a good thing.
Oh my gosh, you'd be like, wait, call security. We got to get her out of here.
Get her out of here. But it's been fantastic. And again, thank you for coming on. And we will have you back because I want to get your updates. So until next time, everybody, I'm thankful that you've tuned in to listen. Your time is valuable, and I'm glad we were able to share this. Please do follow up with Rhonda and all of the great things that she's doing. So this is Rex with the Rex Andrews Show. And until next time, be safe, be bold, and make it a great day.